Dhamma greetings. This is Aya Dhammadinna, a Buddhist nun and one of Bhikkhu Candana's students. As you're about to watch a Dhamma talk by Bhante, please note that he's a wandering monk. He doesn't have a home and he survives as far as food, shelter, and medicine thanks to donations from viewers like yourselves. So if you are benefiting from these amazing Dhamma talks, please consider making a donation to make sure that Bhante is able to continue doing the work that he does for all of us, freely available. Thank you.
Whatever we expect to happen from the Dhamma, what we have learned from the Dhamma, what we're practicing from the Dhamma, through the Dhamma, according to the Dhamma. The Dhamma itself, basically, whatever we're expecting it to be, can only be manifested, can only take place while we're alive, while we are in this body. And to assist us, to help us, in living a life that enables us to have the Dhamma in our thoughts, in our physical actions, emotions, in the speech. We must use the experiences that we undergo. We must apply them. It's not a situation where we're on one end and experiences are happening to us. So we're basically defenseless, vulnerable to these things. And of course, there's the principle of karma in the sense where the outcome of past actions manifest, like touching a very hot stove with your bare hands. That's a karma, the action, the intentional action. But the karma in the sense of the vipaka, the fruit, the outcome of that karma is immediate. That's an experience. But oftentimes, whatever is happening with us, around us, even to us, we can't help but think of it as, I'm on the receiving end of things. Why is this happening to me? Why has this thing happened to me? And the moment we engage in such thinking, we have missed the boat. We have missed the mark. We're playing victim to events, which means we have been had. We have gone and bit the bait. We've taken the bait. We have gone with the story of the experiences. And this is another way of understanding asmimana, the conceit I am that Lord Buddha talks about throughout the suttas, the discourses. It's so huge, it's so pervasive, it's so present in everything we do. Sometimes one might think that this is simply the I, the personality view, the concept that I am this and you over there, or that thing over there is that. So it turns into automatically subject-object relationship. That's basically at the crux of victimhood, whether the victimhood involves terrible things happening to us, or being treated unfairly, or something a lot simpler, a lot smaller in magnitude. Earlier, before we sat, I was mentioning how physical injuries and things that we undergo, where we know we can see the effect of the impact of it, we see it. Part of the brain kicks in, and if not all of it, and the body reacts to it. It goes through turmoil, it goes through even trauma. But the trauma, if we let it be or stay at the physical level, the bodily level, it's not as bad. It will come and go. It's just like being in the ocean and the waves come. And if you're really floating, the waves will just use you as a driftwood and go over you, around you. Because you're not holding a very firm position by anchoring your feet in the sand. So you're not much of a challenge for the waves, so it just goes around you. You're not resisting it. So if we leave the body to handle the situation, it's a lot different than engaging fully with that experience, such as an injury, and then there's the emotions now kicked in. And the emotion, obviously, here would be, if it's an injury, it's going to be a painful, emotional stimulus that was received, which will generate in us animosity, hatred, what Lord Buddha calls it dosa. The anger, the hatred, the ill will, or resentment at the very least. That why is this happening? Here is, again, we can see a different nuance of the victim mentality that we all have. So long as we have this identification with an I, me, myself, my identity, who I am as a substantially present, unchanging individual who's now having to deal with this. This is one way of understanding atta, against which we have anatta, which Lord Buddha taught. This is why it's not a mere non-self. And we say it and we walk away. We just like, yeah, we say it in passing and just, okay, we anatta. And most, if not all people, basically, unless they've really dedicated a good portion of their lives to understanding it through practice, they won't know that this is deep. This is very visceral to your every moment to moment experiential living. This is you. This has everything to do with you. It's not a concept. It's not a principle of philosophical viewpoint. No, this is you and your relationship with what is happening. So with that in mind, I would like you to join me for this ride today with this sutta, which is the Kosala Sutta. And it comes from the Book of the Fives. And in it we see how Lord Buddha talks about this very existential crisis that a human being goes through. The loss of a loved one. And another way of translating this, instead of in Kosala, the English translation of this title, Kosala Sutta, in Kosala, another way of translating it, therefore, is the removal of the arrow of grief. Because it is an arrow that all of us are shot with the moment we are born. We are shot with this arrow, and it's a painful arrow. And it's not just one arrow. Depends on how many loved ones, how many things we try to bring in and become identified with. But primarily, this sutta deals with the grief of a loved one over their loss, their death. Of course, it's not just that. It depends greatly on how much you allow for it in your perspective of experiencing life. How much will you allow yourself to go probing this thing called grief? Most of us don't feel comfortable with grief. We just walk 7 miles away from it. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And for that reason, oftentimes people will engage in meditation techniques, emphasis on underlying techniques, because meditation or even the Dhamma itself is viewed as a way to subdue or entirely get rid of, numb us towards this thing called grief, loss. It could be grief towards or loss of childhood, a past that was wonderful, body, physical functions, how one may have looked, careers, etc. So whatever the arrow for you represents, what thing, what relationship is it about? That was the heaviest, the strongest, the most pronounced. The one that has grave consequences attached to it, if that thing is no more. So you can approach it as such. So this one is from the Numerical Discourses, this discourse, and it is AN 5.49. It's the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fives, and it's the 49th Sutta, and Kosala Sutta. I will stop as usual, as necessary to elaborate on. But basically, that is, you have already so much of material to augment, to support you in going through the sutta. There's so much relevancy for each of us. So please try to find your pain and grief there and try to situate yourself in it, because every one of us is shot with that arrow, at least one arrow, for sure, so long as we are alive still. And let's see what happens. At one time, the Blessed One was living at the monastery offered by Anathapindika in Jeta's Park, in the city of Savatthi. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala approached the Blessed One, and after paying his respects at the feet of the teacher, he sat to one side. This was, however, the very day that Queen Mallika had just passed away. Then the king didn't know about her passing. So he was sitting there, he's excited, he just came after his lunch to pay respect to Lord Buddha and possibly to hear a Dhamma discourse, maybe ask questions. Then someone from the court came rushing in as he approached King Pasenadi of Kosala and whispered to his ear, "Oh, great king, Queen Mallika has died." On hearing this, King Pasenadi suddenly became overwhelmed with sadness, stricken with grief. His head drooped and became distraught as he sat speechless with slumped shoulders. Queen Mallika, who was a very big supporter of the Sasana, and she was the one who introduced Lord Buddha, basically the teachings of Lord Buddha, to King Pasenadi, who in the beginning, he didn't like Lord Buddha at all, nor the Dhamma. He would always find faults with the teachings of Lord Buddha, because he had other teachers, other, gurus of those days, and because he was a Brahmin. But through her, through Queen Mallika, and she always had this very, she knew protocol, she knew how to play also with the king, she knew how to say what to kind of subdue his anger and rage. And but through that skillful way of communicating with him to get what she wanted, she also sweet talked her way into having him lower his defenses and allow room in his heart for the Dhamma. And so this is so basically and he had many courtesans, of course, but she was the queen. She had come from lowly background, and she had become part of, she really gained his heart. She really grabbed him, basically, and he loved her very much. The Blessed One, seeing and understanding the situation and the sudden grief overtaking King Pasenadi of Kosala, said this to him: "Great king, there are these 5 things that are impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma." What are these 5? That someone who is subject to old age may become the exception by not growing old. This is impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. But this is what we see in every commercial that is trying to advertise for something, some special soap that will keep your skin rejuvenated, some secret concoction, some alchemically produced substance that I don't know, some esthetician is selling somewhere. Some plastic surgeon has come up with this procedure that will make sure that you do not get old, not age. Well, Lord Buddha is saying someone who is subject to get old, to want to accept or to expect that they themselves become the unique case or the exception, that is impossible, he says. And by the way, he mentions the word impossible to obtain by anyone in the world. So when he says in the world, that doesn't necessarily mean this world or the physical world only. And that also includes Mahabrahma himself, the Almighty God that they would have in their cosmological schema. So even Mara himself is not the exception. Mara himself will get old. The king of the gods, Sakka or Indra himself, he knows when he's gotten old, when he's he's on the way out, meaning about to die. He will see beads of sweat for the first time forming on his skin, either his armpit or his forehead. His glow will become, his luminosity becomes dimmer. He will see a gray hair showing up. And that causes terror in himself and all his retinue, because our Lord and King is going to die. So no one is an except, including myself, Lord Buddha is saying, basically, all recluses, including him. Lord Buddha is a recluse. So this is the first. You can think of it as a vipallasa, even though vipallasas are structured differently, but basically a distortion. Second, that someone who is subject to illness may become the exception by not getting sick. This is impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. Even gods get sick. Imagine that. Maybe not as badly as we do, but they nevertheless do. Third, that someone who is subject to death may become the exception by not dying. This is impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. That someone who is subject to destruction may become the exception by not being destroyed. This is impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. You have these huge mansions. In my travels around the globe, I've seen the poorer sections of a city or a town or a country, and I've also been driven in areas where you could see where the rich people live, and you see them nicely, or very, well tucked, protected by miles and miles of farmland, and then you see their mansions somewhere over there. Who knows how many guard dogs and radars and all kinds of stuff they have to protect them. But they can't protect themselves from any of this, especially the aspect of being destroyed, taken apart. At the very least, the worms in the body will tear you molecule by molecule, morsel by morsel of food that they're going to consider you being. Take you apart, dissect you from the inside out, destroy you. Or the elements. We're always exposed to the four elements. The primary elements. We have heat, we have solidity, we have, sometimes you probably have seen videos where a car is going on the road on a narrow ridge or somewhere, and then you see this huge boulder fall. And they have the dash cam video capture, and then you see the boulder fall on someone or a car. They're destroyed, not just the car. Or an animal attacks someone, tears them into, what is that? So there's so many different ways where we are destroyed. No one is an exception, Lord Buddha is saying. So this is tearing up also our own misconceptions or the false beliefs we have established for ourselves so that we can just go by day living, hoping that these things or praying that these things do not happen to us. But go and speak to anyone who is getting chemotherapy, for example, or is about to go into surgery. What is that? All those tools that they have on the operating table are going to be bloodied. By whose blood? Ours, or the person who's getting the surgery done. It doesn't necessarily always have to happen to someone else. These are facts. This allows us to be grown-ups in a way, mature in our understanding of life, instead of telling ourselves lies and deceptions, because that's what the world is giving us, deceptions, to keep us fooled, blinded to the facts, that these things are happening. And when you have the facts, then you start doing something. Then you engage in action to do something, to have at least a different approach, a wider perspective, an understanding. And this is where you move out of being a victim. That's another quality that wisdom has, which is power. You want ultimate power? It's not levitation. It's not being the ruler of a country or, something like that. Gain wisdom. And this path gives you that. So that was number 4. And 5, that someone who is subject to fading away into oblivion may become the exception by not fading away. This is impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. And this is a silent but very present fear that most, at least celebrities and those in power have. That's why they keep wanting to be in the spotlight, run for office, become the biggest name in, I don't know, Hollywood. Okay, next time you are online, put a name, a famous name that you heard growing up, of a famous singer, actor, some celebrity, or a world leader of that time. Look at their before picture and after. A famous Hollywood actress, let's say, everybody was going crazy over, let's say, when she was in her 20s, and then look at her, if she survived, when she's 50 or 60, what happens? Oblivion. No one knows her. And if nothing happens, generations change. So the people who knew you are dead or on their way out. So you have new generation. What are you going to do? You keep infusing the newer culture with who you are, why you're important. We do this all the time in different ways, so that we don't fall into oblivion. People don't forget us. That's why Alzheimer's is a terrifying disease now people have. The fear of it is even worse. The fear of it. I better not get Alzheimer's. If I do, I don't want to live. Why is that? So there is that fear of going into oblivion, which is far worse than death for many. So here's where Lord Buddha is going to unravel each of these. Here, great king, the unlearned ordinary person, that is the Putujjana, while experiencing old age, does not reflect. Old age is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, and was reborn. So Putujjana doesn't think like this. They point the finger at themselves, both fingers, and say, why me? And usually you need to have, if there's a me, there's a you. And because it's happening to you, you go ahead and give that you or thing some higher authority, higher source, a God, a bigger, a capital S, self, versus this minuscule self. We've come up with all kinds of schemes and tricks to create a story behind what is really inevitable, something that's going to happen to everyone. But we always think, no, not in this case. This is different. This is different. The Putujjana is like that. Instead, he feels himself to be singled out as he faces old age, and as a result starts considering, now I sit here grieving as I worry, lament, and beat my chest and become confused on seeing myself getting old. Then, as a result, I won't even be able to enjoy food. I will become emaciated and ugly to behold. In such a condition, I won't even be able to do much work. And my enemies will rejoice on seeing me in that state, while my loved ones will increasingly become worried and sad. Thus, when facing the reality of old age, he worries, laments, beating his chest, and becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of an unlearned ordinary person being shot with the poisoned arrow of grief, where he burns in his own anguish by himself. So earlier I was saying fading out into oblivion, now burning in his own anguish by himself. What's the image that we get? Loneliness on your own. This is why a lot of people, when they see a person who is a recluse, who's truly living the life of a recluse, and is choosing to be secluded away from companionships, not going out, not doing things, not being seen in public places and this and that, they shake their head and they say, oh, poor thing. He ruined or she ruined her life. Why? Because there's a big deal over there for them, because loneliness is the real cancer for these people, for society. This is what society wants us not to be. When you're secluding yourself, there's something wrong. Are you sad? Are you upset at something? Why are you locking yourself in the room? I didn't lock myself. I just want to be alone. Can you allow me to? So immediately we equate when you are by yourself, when the person is choosing to be secluded at some point in time in their day as something bad. That's a cultural thing that you see across the board, everywhere. One of the suttas that I was translating today, Lord Buddha is listing the 10 qualities that all who have gone forth must be contemplating continuously. One of them is Lord Buddha is saying anyone who has gone forth should be contemplating constantly that by having chosen this lifestyle of a pabbaja, of a recluse, of a person who has gone forth, then I must ask myself, does my heart become delighted and joyful every time it sees an empty kuti? Does my heart rejoice when it sees a tree with a beautiful shade, no one's there, no dogs, no nothing, no noise? Do I get excited over something like that? Because a person who has gone forth must be delighted in seeing such a thing. Not say, where's my phone? I need to be on somewhere, some platform. So this really goes contrary to all of these distortions of the mind that our society, our cultures have really, made it their mission to destroy in us. Anyone who is thinking beyond the box. Further, great king, the unlearned ordinary person, while experiencing illness, does not reflect. Getting sick is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has gotten sick, grown old, died, and was reborn. Instead, he feels himself to be singled out as he gets sick, and as a result starts considering, now I sit here grieving as I worry, lament, and beat my chest and become confused on seeing myself getting sick. Then, as a result, I won't even be able to enjoy food. I will become emaciated and ugly to behold. In such a condition, I won't even be able to do much work, and my enemies will rejoice on seeing me in that state, while my loved ones will increasingly become worried and sad. So gloomy, 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 gloomy. That's why a hospital is not a joyful place. You might feel okay, you might feel upbeat when you walk in through the doors of a hospital. I've met people who never step foot into a hospital unless they're taken on a 2-1, basically in an ambulance themselves one day. Otherwise, they would avoid it. And I've asked them why, even when their loved ones are in the hospital. There was one woman who didn't go to see her own husband. I was like, why? And the husband was making excuses for her. Talk about a nice guy. But that's completely, irrational. That's completely inhumane. But anyhow, many of us will, even the idea of being in the hospital or being sick is so intolerable But the body is conditioned on factors, several things working with the right temperature, right conditions. But if something doesn't work, if you introduce a foreign body into it, a microbe or something, or some food didn't sit well with you, all of a sudden there's temperature fluctuations, you're vomiting, you can't see straight, there's food poisoning, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very fragile equation that we are living. We're calling normal and healthy. It's so tenuous, it's so unreliable. And it's a miracle that we're sitting healthy. So, and good or great reason for us to be grateful and appreciative of the fact that, oh, wow, I'm okay. I can form these sentences. I can get up and walk and get myself a glass of water. Thus, when facing the reality of illness, he worries, laments, this is the Putujjana, beating his chest and becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of an unlearned ordinary person being shot with the poison arrow of grief, where he burns in his own anguish by himself. Why? Because there's a me and there's a that. That means that is happening to me. I caught that. I caught that virus. I caught that illness. I caught that sickness. I mean, 3 years ago, people were avoiding loved ones as if they're the plague. Talk about idiocy to the next level. People stopped being human and humane. Empathy went out the door in the name of hygiene. Stupidity of a different level. Even stupid people would look at so-called normal people and they would go, wow, that is really, oh. But that's where we were. That's where we still are, some of us. So the Dhamma, more than any other time period, I think, is so desperately needed to wake humanity up. Further, great king, the unlearned ordinary person, while experiencing death, does not reflect. Dying is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, and was reborn. Instead, he feels himself to be singled out as he is nearing death. And as a result, starts considering, now I sit here grieving as I worry, lament. So it's the repeat of that. And beat my chest and become confused on seeing myself. So in such a condition, I won't be able to work and my enemies will rejoice, etc., etc. And this is important because if I can't work, what that means is I cannot provide for my family. Even as a king, you need to be a king. You need to rule and you need to take taxes and you need to have money to support your lavish lifestyle, at least of your children and the crown prince or whomever. And then you don't want to lose face in front of your loved ones who now have to take care of you. That's why so many people, when their loved ones grow old, get sick, what do? They have to put them in a nursing home, or they want to put them in a nursing home, which means you are now at the lowest rung of society in a sense, and placed there by your loved ones, who now enjoy the money you have made, the house that you built, the name you gave them, etc., etc. And sometimes families have to work, all of them, and they cannot afford to hire someone or to even leave work and come and nurse their loved one. There's that situation as well. But the fact is, it will happen. Thus, when facing the reality of death, he worries, laments, beating his chest, and becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of an unlearned ordinary person being shot with the poisoned arrow of grief, where he burns in his own anguish by himself. Why? Because he thinks this is happening to him only. So I have to protect myself. Last year, when I was in Asia, I was conducting actually it was just a talk, a Dhamma talk. It was not a retreat as such. So after the students had, the attendants, those who were there, the audience members who had sat for about a half hour or 1 hour, I looked around, there was so many people wearing masks. Some of them were wearing 3 masks. 3. I don't know how they were breathing, but they were somehow breathing. And I told them I wasn't wearing one. I was sitting far away from them, and I told them, if it's for me, you're worried to get me sick, don't worry, I'm fine. Plus, I have this guarantee that I'm going to die one day. Could be tomorrow, it could be today, and it could be 10 years from now, who knows? And I said, who are you protecting? You all are sitting in a safe distance from each other, yes. You're not doing anything unwise, hygienically even unwise, but this is over the top. This is overboard. Are you Buddhists? That was the next question I asked. And they looked at each other, many of them were actually giggling when I was asking these questions, by the way. When I asked them if they were Buddhists, and they said, yes, of course, Bhante. And I said, have you ever heard of the Four Noble Truths? Do you know anything about rebirth? Do you know anything about the fact that there will be death for each of us? They said yes. And I said, who are you protecting? We're going to get sick and die eventually, but this is too much. This is affecting your thinking. Your well-being is all off the charts in being completely in turmoil. So what are you doing? And I could see a few of them took 1 mask off, leaving 2 more on, or 1 on. And there were couples too, elderly, and they were like, one of them, I wasn't forcing them, of course. I just asked them, pulled away. And then the next time I saw 6 or 7 people without any masks, at least during the Dhamma talk. And then more and more people. People are afraid. But how valid is that fear when you think about the very nature of existence? Further, great king, the unlearned ordinary person, while experiencing destruction, does not reflect. Being destroyed is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone, has grown old, died, been destroyed, and was reborn. If you go looking for Alexander the Great's, I don't know why they call him the Great, but the bones of Alexander, but you really have to do some digging. Probably you will never find it. People still scour and look around the world, claiming that they found bones of this saint or even the Buddha. You can't find the bones of them, right? I mean, there are some relics, of course, the tooth relic in Sri Lanka and things like that, but imagine, while the person was alive, and then the body is destroyed, gone. And now we go looking for them, some of these people. But at the same time, it's creating chaos and fear in us. I don't want to be destroyed. I don't want to be destroyed. Don't worry, life takes care of that. Now I sit here grieving, he thinks, as I worry, lament, and beat my chest and become confused on seeing myself about to be destroyed. Then as a result, I won't even be able to enjoy food. I will become emaciated and ugly to behold. Some students who can handle it, or who are too attached to their bodies or afraid of sickness and death, what I've done often is I would show them images or videos of parts of the Himalayan mountains in India or Tibet even, especially in Tibet, where they have the custom of when the person dies, the family, many places they don't have a car, so they have to carry the dead body to a place or go and get a monk to come and do the final rites type of a thing. And once that is done, they will take the body, sometimes for days, over certain areas until they reach the edge of a cliff where there are these families, or it's a class of people, in fact. They are the lowest rung of Tibetan society, by the way. It's like they're Sudras, they're untouchables in a bad way. And what these people do is handle the dead bodies. So for listeners who are uncomfortable with that, this is a Dhamma discourse, so death goes hand in hand with the Dhamma. So there's a purpose. So that's the extent of my disclaimer here. So what they do is they take the body, and there's video footage of this, and already you have so many vultures there, hundreds of vultures waiting. And the person takes them and they cut the body into pieces. Now, sometimes people, this is supposed to be shocking to the mind of the person, because shocking for what reason? Not just for the shocking value, no, to disconnect us from the identification that we have with this body, with the health, or the illusion that this body is supposed to live forever. The subconscious desire for the body to live forever. Especially when you see the vultures come, because what the person is doing is making the vulture's job easier to get smaller portions of those. So the student, I have to check to see if the student is able to. This is another aspect of Maranasati. Now we don't have that as much in the world. If there are, it's very small areas in the world that you could maybe be able to go and sit and watch this happen in front of your eyes. And then these vultures, clean up the body. So what they leave behind are just the bones. And then these individuals, these families, this is their job. So they get paid for this. They take those bones and they take them to the edge of the cliff, and they just crush them with hammers and rocks. So what you have is a different form of, it's not cremation, but it's another form of getting ashes, in a sense, out of the bones. And sometimes they're just tossed into the wind. And you have powerful winds at the edges of those cliffs in the Himalayas, or the powdery ash left over, they give them to family members sometime later. But all of these are tools, and they're very powerful tools to really expand our capacity to awaken, because the attachments we have must come apart, must come loose. You cannot attain Nibbana if you're still attached to the body. If you're still afraid of sickness, it's not going to work. It's like wanting to get in the boat and drive, sail away, but you're firmly tied into the dock with chains. And you're refusing. Yeah, but the engine is going, blasting, but nothing's happening. A life is being wasted. That's what's happening. That's why initially I was saying how important it is to look at our experiences, because the Dhamma works. That's the life that we have, the experiences we have is the very fuel to allow the Dhamma to grow in us. It's not going to come from some book or some sutta or some Dhamma discourse even. This is only to demonstrate, to show, to point the finger at the right thing. And that is your experiences in life. That's it. Thus, when facing the reality of destruction, he worries, laments, beating his chest, and becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of an unlearned ordinary person being shot with the poisoned arrow of grief, where he burns in his own anguish by himself. Further, great king, the unlearned ordinary person, while experiencing fading away, does not reflect. Fading away into oblivion is not just unique to me, it is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone, has grown old, died, faded away into oblivion, and was reborn. Instead, he feels himself to be singled out as he faces fading away into oblivion, and as a result starts considering, now I sit here grieving as I worry, lament, and beat my chest and become confused on seeing myself about to fade away into oblivion. 100 years from now, or 120 years from now, every person who is alive today is going to be dead. There will be new people, new human beings that will be reborn tomorrow. And this is happening on a millisecond by millisecond basis. So 8-point-some billion people. People don't have to, pharmaceutical companies, big governments, World Economic Forum doesn't have to worry so much to kill us off, to bring us down to 500 million from 8.5 billion. Already natural process takes care of that. It's what we're doing while we're alive. That's a great opportunity being missed, lost, which Lord Buddha calls it a great misfortune. This person is losing this opportunity because he's too worried. He's forgetting that previous generations of people, like there are videos from 100 years ago in Paris or other things that they have colorized. Black and white, they've cleaned it up and it looks very nice. And you see people's expressions, whether it's in Paris, London, different parts of the world. You look at their faces, they're full of dreams, desires, anxieties, worries, hopes. They're all dead. Nobody knows their name, but they did then. Where are they? Faded into oblivion. And so will we. In India, people didn't know about the Buddha, you know. The time came, not even the pillars, excuse me, that Emperor Asoka placed, these huge, beautiful pillars. They only came, people discovered them over 150 years ago by some British archaeologists. What is this? What is this? And they start brushing away, moving away the dirt, and all of a sudden there's this thing, and they dig and dig and dig, and all of a sudden there's this pillar. And Emperor Ashoka came around 300 years after Lord Buddha's death, and he was forgotten. Emperor Ashoka was forgotten. And we know so much about the Vinaya, the Nikayas, thanks to these pillars that Emperor Ashoka placed to verify that what we have today is in the Theravada tradition. We have a lot of other stuff too, but the originals are still here. Even the teachings are fading away. Thus, when facing the reality of fading away, he worries, laments, beating his chest, and becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of an unlearned ordinary person being shot with the poison arrow of grief, where he burns in his own anguish by himself. And this is where Lord Buddha, he presented what not to subscribe to, obviously the Putujjana way of thinking. And whenever Lord Buddha talks about one, he's also, he's the ultimate physician, right? So he just gave us told us about the sickness. Now he's going to give us the cure. Meanwhile, great king, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing old age, reflects thus. Old age is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, and was reborn. This is not the Putujana. This is the learned, noble disciple. And by not feeling himself to be singled out as he faces old age, he starts considering, now, if I grieve, worry, lament, beat my chest, and become confused on seeing myself getting old, then I won't even be able to enjoy food. If I worry, I won't enjoy my food. I will become emaciated and ugly to behold. In such a condition, I won't even be able to do much work, and my enemies will rejoice seeing me in that state, while my loved ones will become worried and sad. So even when you're sick, when you're getting old, rather, in this case, see the fun in it, see the amusing parts about it. My grandmother used to have dentures. And we, my brother, my sister, and I would, and she would put them, in a glass cup, with water at night on the bedside. And we would just want to find that moment before she slept so that we could go, or early in the morning when she woke up, before, we wanted to wake up before she did because we wanted to see how she would talk without her teeth. So for us, that was so amusing. And then she would make faces. She knew she would, that would make us, laugh and be happy. So she would make fun of old age. And everybody in the house would be having such a blast laughing. That's one way of getting old. You're celebrating in it. I mean, you were celebrating your youthfulness. What are you now, an ageist? Against yourself? So we have to laugh at ourselves in a sense and enjoy the process in that sense, and at least enjoy in the sense that we accept it, not resentful, not resistant to it. Meanwhile, great king, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing old age, reflects thus. So, thus, when facing the reality of old age, he neither worries nor laments. He does not beat his chest nor becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of a learned noble disciple who has pulled out the poisoned arrow of grief, pulled it out, with which the unlearned ordinary person torments himself. By remaining sorrowless, unagitated, and without any worries, in this way, the learned noble disciple attains Nibbana. What? Even old age can become a springboard, a jumping board to Nibbana. Everything is an opportunity to attain Nibbana. Everything, good and bad. So long as we're alive, we have a possibility to get that one-way ticket to Nibbana, even though Nibbana is not a place to go to. Further, great king, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing illness, reflects thus. Getting sick is not just unique to me, it is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has gotten sick, grown old, died, and was reborn. And by not feeling himself to be singled out as he faces illness, he starts considering, now I grieve. Now, if I grieve, worry, lament, beat my chest, and become confused on seeing myself getting sick, then I won't even be able to enjoy food. I will become emaciated and ugly to behold. In such a condition, I won't even be able to do much work, and my enemies will rejoice seeing me in that state, while my loved ones will become worried and sad. So let me turn the tables on all of this and do the opposite of what people expect of me. Most of us want to dramatize, become dramatic about our situations, making a big deal. We don't have to. Because why would I need to be creating anguish for myself? So do you see how it's so relevant to our own life, individual life? And it's all up to the person. It's changing your mindset. So one was thinking of oneself as a victim. Oh, these things are happening to me. I'm the unluckiest person in the world. Or, okay, this is happening. So what can we get out of this? That's wisdom applied, applying wisdom itself. Dhamma is not something to be reserved for like somber, walking. It's not just that. I mean, being observed as that. But it's lively, it's fun. Dhamma is fun. Practicing Dhamma is fun. Fun as in, there's enjoyment in it. It's not like carrying, the cross is like, that was the big shocker for me, when, all my life as a, born a Christian, gone to a monastery, a Christian monastery to become a monk, that was the thing. That was the litmus test. That was, are you sad enough? Are you sobbing enough? Are you in pain enough? Well, look over there. Christ is in pain. Come on, he's crucified. I mean, how could he be smiling? Okay, so sadness and suffering was glorified, is glorified. And I said, after I hit a certain age, I was like, okay, this is enough. Nobody wants to suffer. So what's the fun in glorifying suffering? Where? I need to look around, and every painting I looked in the church was sad. There was nobody smiling. What is wrong with these people? Nobody smiled ever in their lives? How come they never captured that? The artist didn't capture that portion of their life. So I said, no, I'm sorry, there's something wrong here. I need to dig more. Suffering must lead us somewhere wholesome. And suffering is not wholesome. Ever. And this is where a lot of people get the Dhamma wrong when they look at the Four Noble Truths, looking at suffering, and they think, oh, no, Lord Buddha never said that. Identifying, understanding suffering for what it is, and moving out of it by realizing the causes of it. Thus, when facing the reality of illness, he neither worries nor laments. He does not beat his chest nor becomes confused. Great King, this is the case of a learned noble disciple who has pulled out the poisoned arrow of illness with which the unlearned ordinary person torments himself. By remaining sorrowless, unagitated, and without any worries, in this way, the learned noble disciple attains Nibbana. Again, using sickness as a meditation object. Each monastery, the big ones, in those days, would have a place where the sick bhikkhus would be taken care of. And that would also be a great meditation place for going and sitting there, taking care of your fellow bhikkhus, but at the same time, looking at the relationship, looking at their behavior, looking at your behavior, mental behavior, towards this person who is sick. And you had to wash them, you had to clean them up, you had to have them go to the bathroom. They couldn't go, so you had to do it all for them and wipe them. These people who were not your brother, not your father, not your uncle, not your son. But that's where it became an opportunity for bhikkhus to practice metta. And same for bhikkhunis in those days, to really apply metta in action. And also to see their relationship with getting sick. That it is not something that is only reserved for these people. I'm also on this, as long as I'm alive in this body, I'm also in the queue, in line with them. Further, great King, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing death, reflects thus: dying is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, and was reborn. And by not feeling himself to be singled out as he faces death, he starts considering, now if I grieve, worry, lament, beat my chest, and become confused on seeing myself dying, then I won't even be able to enjoy food. And he says the same thing. So thus, when facing the reality of death, he neither worries nor laments. He doesn't go sobbing and saying, "Oh, I'm dying, come and help me." Nor when someone you love is dying or has died. He does not beat his chest, like in the case of King Pasenadi, to whom Lord Buddha is giving this instruction. He does not beat his chest nor becomes confused. Great king, this is the case of a learned noble disciple who has pulled out the poisoned arrow of death with which the unlearned ordinary person torments himself. By remaining sorrowless, unagitated, and without any worry, arrows, in this way, the learned noble disciple attains Nibbana. So death is another great meditation object. You don't have to go far. You can just use Maranasati or your own contemplation of your own death as a great meditation tool. The inevitability of it. I always get a kick out of saying to people, there's only one way out of this body, and that's death. Guaranteed, every one of us will die. So, and to me, that's a respite. That's a refuge. That's a guarantee. Unmistakable. Yeah, that's a guarantee. I like having guarantees. I don't know about you, but it gives comfort, a sense of comfort. Okay, so there is a finish line. Okay, all right. So what I have to do now is the time then. This is what I need to do, what I need to do while I'm alive. And this is why I was saying in the beginning that this is where the Dhamma can come true. All the fruits of the Dhamma can ripen here for us. We can attain the ultimate that the Dhamma provides, Nibbana itself, while we are alive. We can only work on it now. Further, great king, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing destruction, reflects thus: being destroyed is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, been destroyed, and was reborn. And by not feeling himself to be singled out, this is key, not feeling himself to be singled out, which is the opposite of what a regular, normal Putujjana does. So he starts considering, now if I grieve, worry, lament, beat my chest, and become confused on seeing myself about to be destroyed, then I won't even be able to enjoy food. I'll become emaciated and ugly to behold. In such a condition, I won't even be able to do much work, and my enemies will rejoice seeing me in that state, while my loved ones will become worried and sad. Thus, when facing the reality of destruction, he neither worries nor laments. He does not beat his chest nor become confused. Great king, this is the case of a learned noble disciple who has pulled out the poisoned arrow of destruction with which the unlearned ordinary person torments himself. And by remaining sorrowless, unagitated, and without any arrows, in this way, the learned noble disciple attains Nibbana. Further, great king, the learned noble disciple, while experiencing fading away, reflects thus: fading away into oblivion is not just unique to me. It is common to all beings who sooner or later experience it. Everyone who has come and gone has grown old, died, faded away into oblivion, and was reborn. And by not feeling himself to be singled out as he faces fading away, he starts considering, now if I grieve, worry, and lament, etc. That portion is repeated. Again, these PDFs are all available online, so I highly recommend you going line by line as you look at the text. That's why it's there for you to use. Thus, when facing the reality of fading away into oblivion, he neither worries nor laments. He does not beat his chest nor become confused. Great king, this is the case of a learned noble disciple who has pulled out the poisoned arrow of fading away into oblivion, with which the unlearned ordinary person torments himself. By remaining sorrowless, unagitated, and without any arrows, in this way the learned noble disciple attains Nibbana. Therefore, great king, these are the 5 things that are impossible to obtain by anyone in the world, whether one is a recluse, a Brahmin, a Deva, Mara, or even Brahma. These conditions, he means. grieving. So your attitude is what you have control over. As you face these inevitable situations that all of us are struck with, they're unavoidable. How you deal with it, that will make you an arahant or keep you as a putujjana. You decide, Lord Buddha is saying. Grieving, and these are the verses that we have at the end of the sutta. Grieving and lamenting never bore any fruits, as they are of no use, except for causing one's own enemies become pleased in seeing it take place. But for those who are wise, seeing things as they really are, they stand sorrowless and unagitated in the face of adversities, as they look for what is useful and helpful given their situation, which only cause disarray for their enemies, who become confused and sad, seeing the unassailable expression of their face, unfazed. By thinking and reciting the good words handed down, whatever method one uses, whether chanting, reciting, or making offerings, if it is useful, then keep it up, exerting yourself in that way. But when facing a situation where what you wish for is impossible to obtain, then endure it without grieving, as you continue doing meritorious deeds, keeping your precepts and purifying the heart, for there is nothing else you can do. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Beautiful sutta. Beautiful, beautiful sutta. I thought of changing for this week's discourse to choose this sutta because of its, its important message, because it's all of us. It relates. We can all relate to it. It's relevant to all of us. So, but I'll pause here and see if there are any questions, comments. Maybe it did something for you, or I never thought of that, or Any? A good. Oh, yes.
Yeah, Bhante, I would love to have the opportunity to see some of the videos that you mentioned. I think they might be beneficial to me and my inclinations, if that's maybe something we can discuss.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. But I always advise to, you can always pause it when you're watching. I'll send you links. They're all, they're available online. I get them from YouTube, for example. But there's one that I recorded when I was a layman, when I was doing my pilgrimage in India. Before I began, actually, I had gone solo to Kathmandu, and there was a monk friend, a Bhikkhu, who took me to this one of the, I think, 7 biggest temples or sacred places for all Hindus in the world. One of them happens to be in Kathmandu. I didn't know this. So when we were trying to, we both of us were trying to get in, the guards didn't allow me to. They said, "You're not Hindu, you're not allowed." "Are you Hindu?" And I said, "No." He said, "Okay, you can't." So anyhow, the monk said, "Don't worry, I'll get you in." So we went around the big temple, and I didn't know this, but there's I wouldn't call it a river, but it's a wide stream flowing. And we went there, and I saw some smoke, and all of a sudden I was transported by a few thousand years back into India. If you didn't see the watches or the phones that people had, you would think you're back into that time period. So they had these cremation, these pyres, funeral pyres, where people some were already burning, some were being placed, And they thought that I can't stand it. They thought, oh, I'm a Westerner, so I'm probably going to look away, this and that. I took out my phone and I started recording. And I asked them if it's okay, and they said, fine. But it was a very short clip, but I put the phone away because I wanted to experience it. And it's a different feeling when you're there, of course. We don't have that in the West. You can watch videos of cremations. I've seen them in one of those mausoleums, type of cremation funeral places. Sometimes you could see video from outside. This is almost like you're participating in, as if you're one of the relatives standing there, as this is one of your loved ones who's being cremated. So they're not going to be covering the whole body, so you might see toes sticking out or something. And observing that is very powerful. But what I was trying to say was, with a video, you can pause it, because sometimes some of us might not be able to handle that. Emotionally, I want you to be able to observe it, but while maintaining sati. That is key. Because the brain will come in and the mind will come in, basically, it will create a camouflage or a filter to kind of soften it, separate you from that in different ways. So, but I will find those and send a few of them your way. Yes. But it's always good to pull yourself out if it's too much, and then slowly. So it's like titration until you see, okay. And you don't want to completely get rid of this, the shock value, because it's powerful. And that's one of the reasons why Lord Buddha would recommend meditating in a cremation ground, in a cemetery. Nowadays, around the world, Western countries, especially in a place like UK, you have beautiful cemeteries. Beautiful to look at. So you might start enjoying the lichen growing on these very, very old tombstones, or the flowers or the grass. That's one way. But when you're in a especially if you're there for the whole day and the whole night, that's when it gets interesting, because your mind kicks in and starts to make up stories. Sounds all of a sudden become alive with entities, ghosts. I tell people the one place that you won't find that many ghosts, or if any, will be a cemetery, because they have better things to do. There's nothing left for them there. Ghosts are miserable, in misery, basically. And they're hungry, and they're they're living the results of their greedy lifestyle, their severe attachment to things. And they are hungry. So they go into places where they might be able to find those things, at least be exposed to that world. So a dead body is not appealing to them. But anyhow, I digress. So putting the body, the mind into a shock in a studied, well calculated state of a shock is very, very valuable. And that's what we do when we go on retreats, don't we? When you're doing walking meditation, even at home, you're placing your foot down. It's almost like walking on a landmine, I've told people. And there's nothing designated on the ground saying safe zone, danger zone, safe zone. No, wherever you step, you're stepping as if you're about to step on a mine. So you're very careful with sati. And that's also shocking to the mind, because you're halting the brain, you're bringing down the very, very fast, active mind to almost a complete stop. I mean, if you're able to see the heel before it rises, the intention in lifting the heel, before the heel lifts off, if you're observing the Cetana, the intention in your mind, that means you've already slowed things down so much that is shocking to the mind of you while you're not mindful. Does it make sense? So there's different ways. So long as we're in this body, we're always in for a shock. Yes. Any comments, thoughts before we conclude today's session? All right. So let's transfer some names. Akasatha chabumata deva maga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangarakantu lokasasana. Akasatha chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangarakantu desana. Akasatha chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirangarakantu mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And I just wanted to say that the recent events in the world also can help, like especially if you can see those clips of children being pulled out of rubble or covered, whether alive or not, instead of flipping through the channels. Unfortunately, we're living at a time period where that has become normal and sadly not as shocking as it used to be for the previous generation. So today's even children are seeing things and they're like unfazed by it, and that's not a good sign. But for a meditator, it's still very poignant, it's very powerful, because you can place yourself there in the shoes, you place yourself in the skin of that father or that person who's pulling that dead baby out. What happens to you without losing your composure, without losing your equanimity? This is key. We don't just shock. This is important. Whether you're doing Maranasati, whether we're just observing you while you're being, while you're coughing, even while you're sick, having a high temperature, fever or something, always come back to the equanimous state of mind. This is key. Otherwise, the mind is going to be shaking all over the place. And then what do? You go back to your family, you're going to be agitated at the drop of a hat. Somebody might say something, you will take it, you're so hyped up. So it's key to always come down to the baseline, to the equanimous state, to have that tranquility. And don't leave your meditation cushion unless you've reached that tranquility. It's key. We must remember to do that. Otherwise, you're walking and you're like a walking tornado, waiting to happen. So this is all about you. It has nothing to do with the outside world. So that's why you can take the Dhamma with you anywhere. Anyhow, so be well and take care of yourselves, and may the Triple Gems blessings be with you and your loved ones. And it's interesting because I see so many different time zones, and some of you are sitting through very, very, very early morning or very, very late at night. So extremes and everything in between. So I applaud you for your adhitthana, as well as all the teachers who have gone before us, and thanks to whom we have the Dhamma today. They would also applaud you, at the head of whom is the chief, Lord Buddha himself. He taught the Dhamma for us, for you, to attain the very fruits that he himself and all the Arya Savakas have tasted. You also. are next in line. But with work, with wisdom. Sukhi Hotu.